Hi there. Make sure my cat's in view for a few seconds here before he runs away. Don't let him fool you. He's not as sweet as he wants you to think. But I think I'm going to make a Crawfordsville Monster. So, starting with a half ball here made out of wood. So it'll be a great big eyeball in its mouth. In case you didn't, yep, there he goes. In case you didn't see it before or didn't watch that video, this is the basic general gist of the critter I'm going to be sculpting. It's not going to look like that exactly, of course, because I'm going to be sculpting it so it'll be a lot easier to mold on a small scale. But that's the basic general idea. So I start with, like I say, the eyeball, because that'll be the hardest thing to get going later on. Then I'm going to just kind of rough in some teeth on it. I'll come back and make those a lot more detailed and skinnier or whatever I want later on. But for now, I'm just going to attach a little clay basically where I think I want those. Just go ahead and squish that back on the back side. I'm going to build a bunch of clay on the back anyway, might as well. So off to the right here that you don't see, I've got a hot plate with my monster clay in it, and it's warming it up so it's really soft and squishy and easy to move. Got a blanket on because it's cold. In the background you might hear my space heater. Probably won't have that running for too long because it's not that cold, but that is way too long. Let's shorten you up so I can put another one from the bottom. Of course, the ball is so smooth it doesn't really want to stick that well. But that's okay, it won't really matter since I'm just sculpting these for a mold. Let's see, let's have it narrower on the bottom. I'll just wrap that around. This will be really pain in the booty and hard to manage for a little while here until I get closer. And it's going to look terrible for a while too. That's just the way that works. And it's slow, so this video may be a couple of video lengths long. A couple of episodes, if you will. Get you back up there a little. There we go. And try really hard not to squash those too much when I put some more clay on the back, and I'll start using that to kind of hold them in place. Whoops. Don't want clay in that blanket. There's my cat again. How's it going, Nixie? Yeah? Coming over to say you demand sacrifice. Well, tough. You're gonna have to wait. I've already fed you today. That's a warm bit right there. Super squishy. Okay, I'll let that cool down and get a little harder. And I'll build the backside while it's cooling. Crack goes my metatarsal. That didn't warm up very evenly. It's really hot on this side, so it's squishy, but it's really cool still on this side, so it's really hard. But that's okay. I'm wanting it to be lumpy in the long run, so I probably shouldn't be too retentive about getting this to the shape I was looking for to begin with. Let's see, about how big. And it said it was kind of like an eel, so I'm going to give it a little bit more of a flattened body here, and eventually give it kind of a tail ridge fin. I want to make it short and stubby so it's easy to mold, but looks kind of cute, almost chibi version of it. I'm not a big fan of chibi stuff, but I think a line of tiny, kind of cute monsters is probably a cool idea. I've seen some other monsters done that way, and that's all nice. I usually collect them when I find them, of course, but they don't really like to go any farther than scratching the surface of folklore monsters. So that's why I'm here. I want to make some more monsters that most people have never heard of. Dig a little deeper. Our folklore is a heck of a lot more rich and varied than popular culture gives it credit. It's like saying Japan only has kappa and tengu. Like, yeah, no. Not even slightly. Japan is some of the most amazing folklore monsters on the planet, in my opinion. And I've studied quite a few of them myself as well, and I love them. I really do. But there's a whole lot of Japanophiles in our country, in the United States, and around the rest of the world. So a lot of your yokai and such are becoming a lot more common knowledge, especially within the subcultures that really get into that kind of thing. But unfortunately, the United States has enjoyed very little fame for its folklore monsters. You get Bigfoot, and that's about it. And it's a real shame, because holy cow, that's certainly not it. I've found well over 600 different monsters in folklore in the United States already. And that is certainly not all Bigfoot. Though I can say, if I never read another book about Bigfoot again, it'll be too soon. Having said that, I read most of them anyway, just in case they have something useful to say. Rarely, but it does sometimes happen. These days it's mostly just trying to make a buck on the fantastical on the big fad of monsters. Which is, a shame in my book, because I think it's worth a heck of a lot more than just fad. But I can understand the allure to trying to make money off of it. I mean, after all, I'm kind of hoping some of you buy some of these when I finish sculpting them. That would be nice. What did I tell you? Bigfoot has enjoyed way too much popularity in the last, well, ever since he was invented back in the, whatever it was, 1950s. So, he's not my favorite. After a while, I get all high school goth kid or something about it, like, oh, it's just so mainstream. Oh my god. I totally get that way about monsters. Dragons and vampires and zombies. Oh my god, it's just so overdone. I always have students that, as soon as they find out that I study and make monsters for my artwork, they're like, oh, sweet, you must have made some really great dragons. I'm like, nah, that stuff's lame. They're like, oh my god, how could you possibly? I'm like, study monsters for several decades and see how you feel about dragons still. You tend to get a little bit more interested in the esoteric. But maybe that's just me. That down so that it doesn't pick up on the thing. I'd really rather not have to worry about copyright. After all, I'm just listening to it as background. Not to say it's not any good, but I wouldn't really know I'm not listening. If this clay gets too warm, it might burn my skin, first of all, but it also can liquefy, so that can be a really big challenge to deal with. You don't want all that. back again, I see, bud. Decided you wanted to clean yourself for everybody. Let the whole world know that you're a clean guy, huh? Yeah. Just keeping on doing some stuff. Not the most exciting part of this. Believe me, if I could wrangle a cat, I'd have him entertaining you for the whole time, but I rather value my blood being inside of my skin. But I guess you're not coming here for cat videos. Millions of better choices for that. Okay, well, that's the basic gist of the form, I think. Now it's just a matter of sculpting it a little bit more. I'll put some attachments for where I want the little flipper fin things to go, but I'm going to cast them separately because I want them out of clear resin, because I think that'd just look nicer. So let me grab my tool here, or a couple of them maybe. See me use one of these things all the time with sculpting. It is one of my most favorite tools. It can do some really great things. I'm going to put some lines in for texture. Just going to smooth it out towards the front a little. Okay, it's finally time I have to deal with these teeth. That's way too big. Let's just start with the slightly smaller one. Okay, so let's go somewhere around that. Right about there. Nah, it's a little long still. Oops. Oh, I'm just bound determined to get clay in my blanket here, aren't I? That's why my cat's cleaning himself after all. He's like, oh, you're going to make a mess. I'm going to be clean over here to show you up. Okay, these two are way too long. So let's chop them down quite a bit. After all, I have to leave a little space in the inside here so I can make an eyeball. I'm probably going to... Normally, I would sculpt the details of the iris and pupil and all that, but maybe even I would normally do some like veining and things on the side just for details and such. But partially, I'm going to leave it smooth because it's going to be sculpted, or it's going to be cast even smaller than this because I'm planning to shrink the mold. But also it allows me to change what position I want the eye to be looking in without it having to worry about it just not working with the sculpture. So it can be painted in any direction you feel like. Have it looking straight out or off to the side or something like that. It would be just fine. On the sketch, and gave it a whole lot longer nose, snout, if you will, so that it projected out quite a bit. And then the mouth was seated down into the kind of in the middle of the mouth, almost into the throat. But that would be much more difficult to sculpt on a small scale and almost impossible to get a really good clean mold out of that would be able to do more than just one casting before the mold is destroyed, just trying to demold. So instead, I'm pushing it out towards the front of the mouth here so that it can make it a lot smoother surface, a lot less undercut necessary. Yeah, it'll make it easier, but it'll also make it easier for the paint to draw in the eye when you get there, instead of trying to fit it way down into a throat. Whoop, I'm pulling that off. It's not what I wanted. I'm being too aggressive here. Get back on there. Pause for a second to turn that heat off. It's getting a little over warm. Doesn't hurt that I have a hotbox cat heating my feet. The boring slow part. It's a lot more entertaining to watch somebody pour a mold, or even cast from a mold. That's more entertaining. You'll get to see that eventually. Okay, that's a little better. I'll detail them here in a little bit, but okay, switch back to you, and you're cooled down a bit, so that's going to be a little harder to move around. But I'm getting there. Just make these little things into teeth by pulling the lip like so. Then I can go back in and throw in a little detail. Don't want to get too crazy there because it won't cast very well if I do. There goes the UPS truck. They won't have anything for me today. Let's go ahead and make them a little bit more like the lips that I drew. So I'll kind of pinch them up. Pinch them up a little. Give a as they so tactfully called when I was a kid, snot trough in here. So tasteful, so elegant. Just under the septum, but he won't have one because he doesn't have a nose. A little bit pushing my luck here. Trying to get some detail and push it back down in there. Might be a little tricky to get that demolded. But we'll see. Maybe if I push it a little bit further forward, that's probably going to be good. Makes it look a little bit like just a slug or something, or a leech from the back here. Kind of glad leeches don't have teeth like this. Well, very glad, actually. Would not want to come out of a lake with a leech that sucked onto me with teeth like that. Smoothing out the teeth a little bit while I go. Don't want to do too much work to it yet because I'll just mess it up when I'm sculpting things later. But I do want to get a little bit more detail on them. Might need a little clay in there just so it doesn't get so much of an undercut. Undercuts are the bane of a mold maker's existence. It's a lot less of a problem when you're molding rubber. But plaster molds that I've done quite a few of too, yeah, they don't like that at all. That's the fastest way to ruin a plaster mold, is to pour it over an undercut. Okay. Got a basic, wonky, crazy, lumpy sort of feel a little going on. So I'm going to hint at some teeth over here like I did on the other side. I like those better. So See if I can get just a little bit more detail on these before I get too far. Okay. So, at this point, it's just a matter of making the body the way I like it. And then giving it some lumps for attaching the fins to. Can just kind of accentuate some of the lumps here a little. Finger's too big for that one. Or thumb is anyway. I'll leave that stretching off this way, kind of like a muscle going down the neck. Twist a little more. There we go. So he's raw coming around. Kind of an Adam's apple sort of thing going there. We'll round this off a little so it's more of a lump. Yeah, that'll be better. Pull a little bit around in here. Alright. And round that off a bit. Make it a big old lump back here. Yeah, we'll do that same kind of thing over here. I really like making rubber molds and casting plastics because they're so much easier to deal with, so much more forgiving. If I were doing this in a solid, hard mold like the plaster that I was talking about before, I would have to have one piece that would come off this way just so that this curve here would be able to release on both sides that way, but then that would keep these from pulling straight. So I'd have an undercut under all this. So it would have to be like 3, probably 4 different pieces just to make a mold out of this thing, just as it is. And that would be just ridiculous. And certainly not necessary for casting plastics. Now, if it were ceramic or like a slip mold for ceramic slip, that's what I'm talking about, then it would have to be something made out of plastic, plaster, I mean, because it needs to absorb the moisture and pull that out so it solidifies it a little bit better as it sits there. So rubber doesn't do that, and it won't work for a slip mold. sadly. So those usually take a heck of a lot more effort and time and very careful planning, and more often than not, a lot more simplified forms. You don't have a whole lot of really complicated sculptures that are made into ceramic slip molds, because they just don't pull apart very well either if they're too detailed. If you get too much surface detail, it sticks way too well, and that's not fun at all. Not a good day at that point. Been there, did that, didn't really care for it. Okay, so he's getting a little lumpies under his bellies. Guess he's got multiple bellies, apparently. Just, because that's what I said by accident. All right. I think I'll lumpify this a little bit more. And body's getting close. I'll just have to add the attachments for fins. Then I might do some surface texture details, like give it some sort of, I don't know, scaly flesh or something maybe, and I don't know, do little lines on the lips for the wrinkles in lips. But it's small enough I can't really get too crazy with all that. But I'll do some. Gotta have a little detail. After all, it'd be boring if it weren't. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab some warmer clay again. I'm going to try to figure out where I think, right around there would be a good spot. Let's not make it so big. Good spot for an attachment. Smooth all this out at the edge. Let it attach. Okay, now I'll do a kind of thing like that. So when I sculpt the fin, I can just sculpt that shape, and hopefully with the casting I can get it to fit. I'll just make a little bit more detail. Make it look a little bit more natural than just a clay. Okay. And that's a little too small for the other one. So I'm going to get a little bit more clay. That's kind of hot. I left my clay warming up. You can tell because now it's hurting my finger and it's almost fluid when I pull it out of there. And that's a little too much. That's about right. A little too far back. That's about right. All right. Squish around, mold it in. Give it an attachment. Let's see, this one I'll have a little bit higher up. I think it's facing that direction. All right. We'll need to squish that back down again to even it out a little. Soften those down a little. Don't need to be too obnoxious about the line work. Start looking like a cartoon drawing or something. It's already goofy enough in its form. Don't really need it to be any goofier in its execution. Make sure that fits again. Yep. Okay, 2. I kind of need to have more than 4 though, because that seems a little too, quadrupedal. So I'm probably going to have 6, just so it seems more like the description saying that the thing had flipper-like fins or something that went all the way down its body. Just 2 or 4 of them doesn't give that impression at all. So, here we go again. Only I'm debating on making them different sizes, smaller as it goes down, or just casting the same fins, 3 of them per side, and then being done with it. I'm not sure if that would be something I could be satisfied with or not. Let's say 2. Not quite enough clay. And that didn't get almost any other clay on my finger. There we go. And 3, no, 3. 2, 3. Give it a little bit more of a tail feel at the end of it. Yeah, that's going to be very fin heavy, but I guess that's the way it is. Pinch off a little of that. It doesn't need quite that much clay. Okay, fine. Live in the palm for a little while. I can hear my cat snoring from across the house. Where'd my tool go? Oh, I put it back up here. Okay, let's see. Instead of more or less straight out, it's kind of up. But instead of that, let's go down this time. Because it says like if you look at a array or something like that, they undulate as they move in order to get the propulsion they need out of it. So I'm going to do something similar with the posing on here. Now, of course, when you attach these fins, you can do a little bit of play with it, because this isn't going to be just that's all you can do. You can twist them and have them kind of a little bit of yaw to it or whatever, and maybe even slight different poses as you go. Because the acrylic or resin, I mean, well, it's acrylic resin, so yeah, that's the same. But it won't fit exactly the way this is going to be, especially for the smaller version, because there is no way of predicting exactly how small the shrunken mold is going to get. So, unfortunately, it'll be relatively close is all. I'll just kind of have to sculpt it so it can have a little bit of a wider mouth to it than it needs, just in case. But hey, if nothing else, I can always sculpt more fins to fit whatever size it's going to be. That won't be fun. I would not like to do that multiple times. But I will if I have to. I'll worry about details later. But let's attach stuff first before I get too carried away. Yeah, you'll be a little bit closer together on this side, well, because there's just a little bit of a bend to it. This would probably be better. Doop, doop, doop. All right. Get the basic gist of the shape of that one, then squish it down to reform it a little. And let's see, you are facing roughly up like that. So I'll go really straight out. we go. Treating these slightly like eyelids. Kind of like they're kind of enclosing like a ball attachment or something that the fins might have. Though that doesn't seem terribly likely. It seems like an interesting design aesthetic to go with, though. Okay, there's 4. Oops. Taking after it with my thumbnail there by accident. A little on the warm side. There we go. Still a little small. Get a little more clay. Still just a little too big. It's not too bad. Give that one just a little bit more space. Yep, a little too big. So let's tear a little off. Okay, up, out. Let's go down. Let's actually go down and back. That'd be nice. Yeah. That always seems to go off while I'm doing this. I set that thing for multiple hours, like several hours, and it just happens to go off when I'm recording. I typically start playing that game early in the morning when my brain refuses to wake up. I'm like, nope, nope, too early. I refuse to brain today. So I just do mindless Simpsons tapped out things for a little while. But today is October. I'm actually doing this on October 1st. So it starts with my favorite part of the year. So they'll be eventually starting a Halloween event, I imagine. I'm not all that boned up on my Simpsons factoids or anything, but seems like something they'll be doing pretty soon. And I imagine I'll be a little more entertained by the show. Or by the game, I mean. The show stopped entertaining me other than their Halloween episodes quite a long time ago. It's not a bad show. It just, not doing it for me. Okay. Let's put the last attachment on there, and then I can do some detail that I keep trying to do even though I'm not to that point yet. Way too much clay. Alright, how are you? A little small maybe. Toss that back in there. A little bit up maybe. Yeah, that's probably about right. Good enough. The good thing about this monster clay being meltable or softenable with heat is that it also conversely gets harder when it cools down. So now this stuff is more solid and I'm not having to worry quite as badly about touching it and screwing it up, though I still have to make sure I don't push on it to any large degree and cause it to malform or deform, I guess, because it's not like it's forming as I'm doing it. Okay, down. Let's go kind of a straight up but back, because I like the back idea. That's kind of fun. Okay. There we go. Give it a little bit better shape to it. Just a little bit. There we go. Now it looks like it's got a face on the back, doesn't it? Long, crazy nose. That's kind of a fun idea too. Not what I had in mind, but kind of fun.